In today's video, I'm going to show you how I take a piece of fabric and just some simple children's crayons and create a beautiful 4-leaf clover that you can use in your sewing projects or just follow along. You can use it in your art journals as well. It's a fun image, it has a little depth, and it's easy enough to create with everyday products. So to color the 4-leaf clover or the shamrock, it's up to you, on fabric, I have a piece of muslin here. It's just cotton fabric. And then I've ironed some interfacing. This is just interfacing I can sew through because that's the purpose for me. You can do this project on paper or on fabric. The paper will have a different tooth. So if you think about a watercolor paper is kind of rough and bumpy, fabric, if you really look at it under a microscope, isn't perfectly smooth. It might feel smooth, but there are ridges, and that's what traps the pigment and the wax. So the smoother your paper, like computer paper or copy paper, you'll transfer more pigment and wax because it fills up the paper quicker. So just use a lighter hand with the smoother paper you're using. And the same thing with fabric. The thicker the fabric, the bumpier, can take a little more wax and pigment. So I like to have an assortment of colors. Even though the clover, the 4-leaf clover or the shamrock is going to be green, I like to have other colors mixed in. Yellows and browns. I have my different colors here. I'll just quickly make a swatch to show you. But you don't need to use these colors. I have an olive green, burnt sienna. This is a forest green, a shamrock, a sea green, and a green yellow. I just like to have a bunch of colors that give me some variation in the greens and then have a little brown and a lighter color. So I went with this very yellowy light green, but it doesn't matter. So after I have my swatches of color and I'm happy with my colors, I cut down my fabric. I just need it to be slightly bigger than this 3x5 card. You can use any size you'd like. I have on the back here some fusible interfacing. This just stiffens up the fabric. You could use freezer paper or you could tape it down to your surface. I just want to keep my fabric taut. And then I created a little template to make my 4-leaf clover. Basically, I just took another piece of a 3x5 card and cut out a little heart. And then I realized that was too big for my work, so I trimmed down the heart a little bit further. And now I'm just going to take my lightest color, this green yellow, and I'll trace out all of my leaves on the 4-leaf clover. You could do this with a 3-leaf clover if you wanted, or you could freehand sketch this as well. So after I have the sketch of my petals, I just want to create a little bit of a little stem here. Now I keep a sharpener handy because I like to work with sharp crayons, and I just sharpen them as I need them. I'll have to peel down any of the paper, the label, and then I just sharpen that point. So to get started with, I'm going to start for each petal, starting at the centermost point. And I'm going to start here with my forest green. It's my darkest green. So I'm just going to kind of push out the color fairly lightly. I'm not filling in all of the weave of the fabric. And I'll do this on all 4 petals. All of my strokes are going in the same direction away from the center of the petal. Now once I have that, I'm pretty happy with it. I'm going to take that same color. I'm just going to go over that tracing that we did of each of the petals, that yellow tracing. And likewise, I'm going to lightly go down the length of this stem. A little bit of the yellow will peek through, and I like that effect. Now, as my crayon breaks, little pieces of the wax will come off, so I'll just want to move that around. So creating the shamrock, I want it to be darkest in the center and work its way light out, but I don't want it to be a solid gradient. I want there to be a little ring of darkness. So I'm going to take my burnt sienna, and I'm going to really emphasize the curves, again, keeping my strokes going up and down, nice and long, longer on the sides and shorter in the center. I'll do the same thing on all the petals. Longer on the sides, shorter on the center. Again, I'm using a light hand. I'm going to create a lot of layers and a lot of blending. I'm also going over a little bit of that first layer of green that I put down. So now I'm going to take my olive green. It's kind of a brownish green, more so than that dark green that we used, the forest green. And I'm just going to start at the base and run over both layers of color, the burnt sienna and the green. And I'm just filling in any of the areas on each petal. So I'm liking how that's coming out. So I'm going to take my sea green, this color here, and on the petals I'm going to work from the outside, the edges, sort of in just a little bit. And again, I'm going over very lightly all the colors I've already put down. And I'll do this on all the petals. And now I want to take that green yellow, that color that I made my original outline from, and kind of bring the color almost to the edge. I'm going over everything, just this time in circles, and just elongating the color scheme that I already have down. Now it's not very green, it's not a spring green look. This is my kind of underlayer, but I really like the way the yellow is coming to the edge of the flower. It's giving it a lot of depth, or the edge of each petal, I should say. And by going over the previous petals, I'm kind of blending it all together. So I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to come in with that shamrock green. That's that bright green, that spring green. Starting in the center of each of the petals, I'm just going to fill in every area. I'm going to go with a much lighter hand over by the lighter yellow, but I still want a small layer of that green on top of it. And I'll do that for all the petals. And you can see how this changed the coloring here of this shamrock. Now I'm going to take that color one more time, just go over lightly all the areas on the petal, particularly starting from the center and working my way out. Then I'm going to go back in with that green yellow and do another layer on top of everything. So I'll go over that one more time. So that's how the shamrock looks. You could stop there if you want. I really like how that's coming out and the layers are. I'm going to take a piece of a paper towel here. I'm going to just put it on top of my crayon, which is on top of a mat here. And I'm going to take my hot iron, set for the temperature of the fabric, the cotton, and I'm now going to try and melt that wax onto the paper towel. The way you know it's done is when you lift the paper towel, the wax is placed onto the paper towel. It's fairly subtle, but you can see a little bit of a clover there. So now I'm just going to move the paper towel around and repeat this process until it's clear. And this removes the wax by melting it off the fabric, and the paper towel absorbs it. Now doing that melting process will dull the colors, so you can go back in and add some more color and more pigment to brighten it up. And then you'll take the iron and remove it again. I'm trying to fill in any areas that the melted wax displaced with the paper towel and the iron, just to get a little brighter result. But you can stop when you're happy. If you did this on paper, you could still do the process trying to remove some of the wax, but it's not necessary. This is necessary because I want to use it on fabric, and while I'm not going to launder this particular piece, I do want to make sure that the crayon doesn't wipe off. So again, one more time, I'll take my iron and remove the wax. And so when you finished your ironing, you have this beautiful 4-leaf clover you can use in your work. Now I'd like to show you how I use it in my work, because I know that's a kind of a question I get asked. What do you do with it after you have it created onto fabric? Here's the one I created today in the video, and here's one where I just added some stitching to it. I added some lace around the top and the bottom, folded over the pieces. I have a little trading card that I can use, a little textile trading card. If you look closely, you can see stitching that I did on the actual 4-leaf clover. It's just a beautiful little piece. If you'd like to see more crayon coloring fabric images, I have a playlist on my channel. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe. And thank you for joining me today.